The Eterna supremacy loomed above the Earth delegation's ship, a sleek monstrosity of alien engineering. Its hull shimmered with a deep, iridescent blue, powered by technology humanity could scarcely comprehend. Inside, the diplomatic chamber glowed with sterile light, a calculated display of the Galactic Empire's opulence and power. Every detail, from the floating platforms to the automated service drones, underscored the Empire's mastery of energy-based innovation. Commander Alaric Valen stood near the head of the chamber, his dark uniform impeccably pressed, his posture radiating disdain. His silver-scaled skin reflected the ambient light, a subtle reminder of his alien lineage and the genetic perfection the Empire claimed to embody. He regarded Earth's representatives with barely concealed contempt, his sharp features curling into a smirk as he addressed them. "Captain Ward," Alaric said, his voice smooth but edged with condescension, "I must commend your people for their audacity. Coming here with hopes of negotiating, despite your limitations." Marcus Ward, the ranking officer of the Earth delegation, met Alaric's gaze without flinching, broad-shouldered and weathered. Marcus was a stark contrast to the Empire's polished perfection. His military dress uniform bore no adornment save for a single silver pin above his breast pocket, a silent testament to his battlefield experience. At his side, a plain steel briefcase rested against the chair leg. "We prefer to call it resourcefulness," Marcus replied, his voice calm, almost conversational. "Limitations are just problems waiting for a solution." Alaric's smirk widened. "Charming. Though I must wonder, do your solutions involve those ancient ballistic toys your soldiers cling to? Primitive relics, by any civilized standard." Before Marcus could respond, another figure entered the chamber. General Zoran was a towering presence, his crimson battle armor gleaming under the light. The Empire's representative for all things military, Zoran's arrival silenced the room. His strides were purposeful, each step a reminder of the Empire's warlike dominance. He stopped before the Earth delegation, his yellow eyes narrowing as he surveyed the humans. "It is time we dispense with pleasantries," Zoran growled, his voice resonant and metallic. "The Empire has offered you the privilege of joining our fold. Integration would elevate your people beyond their backward existence. Refusal, however, is not an option." Marcus leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. "Funny, that sounds more like a threat than an offer." Zoran stepped closer, his towering form casting a shadow over Marcus. "Call it what you will, human. Your resistance is irrelevant. The Empire's energy shields are impenetrable, our weapons unmatched. Your primitive firearms would be as effective as throwing stones against a fortress." The tension in the room thickened, but Marcus remained composed. His hand rested casually on the briefcase handle, a motion so subtle it went unnoticed by most. "Impressive speech," Marcus said, his tone unshaken, "but humanity doesn't bow to threats. We've had centuries of practice, standing our ground against impossible odds." Zoran's lips curled into a snarl, his pride wounded by Marcus's defiance. In one fluid motion, he unsheathed an energy sword from his hip. The blade crackled with blue plasma, humming as it came to life. The Empire's delegates watched in silence, their expressions ranging from amusement to curiosity. "You dare defy the Empire?" Zoran hissed. Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he rose slowly, his eyes locked on Zoran's. The room seemed to hold its breath as the human captain took a single step forward, placing himself squarely in the alien's path. "Careful, General," Marcus said evenly. "The last time someone underestimated humanity, they regretted it." Zoran's blade twitched, its energy field shimmering dangerously close to Marcus's chest. Before he could strike, a faint beep interrupted the standoff. A holographic projection materialized above the table, displaying the Empire's crest alongside a series of tactical readouts. Alaric stepped forward, his voice sharp. "General Zoran restraint. The Emperor values diplomacy, even with less developed species." Zoran hesitated, his blade retracting with a sharp hiss. He shot Marcus a glare that promised retribution, then turned away, his armor clanking as he resumed his place at the table. Marcus exhaled, barely perceptible, and returned to his seat. He reached down, adjusting the briefcase at his side. The motion, though mundane, carried an unspoken promise of preparation. The meeting continued, but the atmosphere was irreparably altered. Alaric resumed his role as mediator, though his tone carried an undercurrent of smug superiority. The Empire's terms were clear. Humanity would submit, or it would face annihilation. Marcus listened, his face impassive, while his team exchanged subtle glances. As the session drew to a close, Marcus stood, his presence commanding attention. "I appreciate the Empire's generous offer," he began, his words measured. "But humanity isn't interested in servitude. We'll find our own way forward." Alaric chuckled softly. "Bravado is admirable, Captain, but bravery without power is merely folly." Marcus's gaze hardened. He reached for the briefcase, lifting it with deliberate care. As he spoke, his voice carried a quiet intensity that silenced the room. Power isn't always about technology or numbers. Sometimes it's about understanding what really matters. With that, Marcus turned and led his delegation out of the chamber, leaving the Empire's representatives to exchange puzzled glances. Behind him, Zoran's fists clenched, his pride demanding satisfaction. In the corridor outside, Marcus allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. He glanced at Lieutenant Eric Stokes, his second-in-command, who walked beside him. "Think they got the message?" Stokes asked, his voice low. Marcus shrugged. "They will. Soon enough." As the Earth delegation disappeared into the depths of the ship, the Empire's flagship hummed with subdued activity. In the chamber they left behind, Zoran stared at the door, his mind already plotting how to erase the insult of humanity's defiance. For now, the battle was still one of words. But the seeds of conflict had been sown, and Marcus knew it was only a matter of time before humanity would show the galaxy just how dangerous a relic could be. The tension aboard the Eterna Supremacy had reached a breaking point. Marcus Ward stood in the corridor outside the diplomatic chamber, his team of Earth delegates silently fanning out around him. Each man wore the composed, resolute expression of soldiers who had seen too much and survived. The air was charged, a storm waiting to break, as Marcus placed a steel briefcase carefully at his feet. A faint tremor in the floor confirmed what he already suspected. The Empire wasn't going to wait long. They had given Earth their ultimatum and received defiance in return. Now, their response would come swiftly, as it always did, with overwhelming force. Lieutenant Eric Stokes, his engineer and tactical officer, leaned in slightly. "They're moving into position," he said, his voice barely audible over the distant hum of the flagship's engines. His sharp eyes tracked the faint flicker of shadows beyond the corridor's curve. Drones, most likely, and a full squad of their warriors. Marcus nodded, his face unreadable. "Let them come." Before Stokes could reply, the corridor lights flickered. A subtle hum turned into a loud, rhythmic pulse, signaling the activation of the ship's internal defenses. Moments later, spherical drones glided into view, their polished surfaces gleaming under the artificial light. They hovered silently for a moment, scanning the humans with lenses that glowed an ominous red. Behind them came the warriors, hulking figures clad in sleek armor, their energy weapons humming faintly as they moved into formation. At their head was Kraxer, the same alien who had threatened Marcus earlier. His face was twisted into a sneer, his confidence bolstered by the overwhelming show of force. "Humans," Kraxer growled, his deep voice reverberating through the corridor, "you were given a chance to submit. Now, you'll face the consequences of your arrogance." Marcus stepped forward, calm and deliberate, his hands at his sides. "Funny," he said, his tone almost conversational. "I was just about to say the same to you." The alien sneered. "Empty words. You brought relics to a battle against gods. The moment hung in the air, electric in charge, before Marcus finally moved. He bent down, unlatched the steel briefcase, and swung it open with practiced precision. From within, he retrieved the weapon, an M2 Browning, a relic by the Empire's standards, yet a masterpiece of human engineering. The heavy machine gun gleamed dully under the corridor lights, its weight settling in Marcus's hands as if it belonged there. Craxer and his warriors hesitated, their expressions shifting from amusement to confusion. The drones, programmed to recognize threats by energy emissions, remained still, their scanners unable to comprehend the significance of the weapon before them. Marcus chambered the first round with a satisfying clack, the sound echoing down the corridor. "Relics," he said, his voice low, "have a way of surprising people." Craxer roared, his energy shield flaring to life as he charged forward. Marcus didn't flinch. He squeezed the trigger, unleashing a deafening roar of high-velocity rounds. The effect was immediate and devastating. The first burst of kinetic rounds struck Craxer's shield, and the energy field shimmered violently before collapsing entirely. The subsequent rounds tore through his armor, sending him sprawling to the floor in a spray of alien blood. Chaos erupted, the drones, finally recognizing a threat, whirred into action, their energy beams firing in rapid succession. Marcus moved with practiced efficiency, his team springing into action around him. "Stokes, cover the left flank," Marcus barked, his voice cutting through the cacophony. Stokes nodded, leveling his own modified rifle, a kinetic weapon salvaged and adapted for this very purpose. He fired in controlled bursts, the projectiles striking true and disabling the nearest drones. The Empire's warriors surged forward, their energy weapons blazing, but it was clear they were unprepared for the ferocity of the human response. Energy shields, once thought impenetrable, crumpled under the relentless assault of ballistic rounds. Armor designed to disperse plasma proved ineffective against the raw kinetic force of the bullets. Marcus advanced steadily, the M2 Browning rattling in his hands as he cut down enemy after enemy. The corridor was a cacophony of gunfire, alien roars, and the shrill hum of malfunctioning drones. One of the warriors, desperate and enraged, lunged at Marcus with an energy blade. Marcus sidestepped smoothly, pivoting to bring the Browning to bear. A single burst reduced the alien to a lifeless heap. "They're falling back!" Stokes shouted, his voice tinged with exhilaration. Indeed, the remaining warriors were retreating, dragging their wounded as they fled. The drones, now leaderless, hovered aimlessly before shutting down entirely. The corridor fell silent, save for the faint hiss of cooling metal and the labored breaths of the Earth team. Marcus lowered the Browning, his eyes scanning the carnage with grim satisfaction. Alien bodies lay scattered, their advanced technology rendered useless against a weapon older than the Empire itself. Stokes approached, his face flushed with the adrenaline of battle. "Did you see their faces?" he said, grinning despite the blood spattered across his uniform. "They didn't know what hit them." "They do now," Marcus replied, his tone somber. He glanced at the shattered remains of an energy shield generator, its core sparking weakly. "And they'll adapt. This was just the first shot." Stokes sobered, nodding. "What's the plan?" Marcus hefted the Browning onto his shoulder, his expression steely. "We push forward, take what we can, and send the data back to Earth. They need to know what we're dealing with, and how to fight it." The team regrouped, moving swiftly and silently through the corridor. The battle had been a victory, but Marcus knew it was only the beginning. The Empire would respond, and the next confrontation would be even more brutal. As they disappeared into the depths of the Eterna supremacy, the echoes of their gunfire still lingered in the air, a defiant reminder that humanity was not as powerless as the Empire had believed. The aftermath of the ambush lingered in the air like a storm's aftershock. Marcus Ward moved with deliberate calm, stepping over the shattered remains of drones and the lifeless bodies of Empire warriors. The M2 Browning hung across his back, its weight a reassuring presence. His team worked quickly, securing the perimeter and scavenging what they could from the fallen. Lieutenant Eric Stokes knelt by the remains of an alien energy shield generator, his hands working deftly to extract its core. The device sputtered weakly, its once brilliant energy field reduced to flickering sparks. Stokes frowned, his sharp mind already piecing together the puzzle. "This," he muttered, holding up the fractured core, "is why they lost. Their shields weren't designed for this kind of impact." Marcus crouched beside him, his eyes narrowing as he studied the device. "Explain." Stokes tapped the core with a gloved finger, his voice steady but tinged with a hint of excitement. "Energy shields like this are calibrated to disperse high-energy attacks. Plasma, lasers, anything that operates on similar wavelengths. But kinetic rounds? They're physical. The shields absorb the first impact, but they can't dissipate the energy fast enough. It overwhelms the system and destabilizes the entire field." Marcus considered this, his mind already racing ahead. "So, all their defenses are built on the assumption that energy weapons are the only threat." "Exactly," Stokes said, nodding. "They've optimized their tech to fight advanced civilizations like themselves, but in doing so, they've completely overlooked simpler solutions. Our relics hit them with force they aren't equipped to handle." The captain's lips curved into a grim smile. Their arrogance just might be their undoing. Before Stokes could reply, Corporal Haynes, the team's communications officer, approached with a handheld device. His face was tight with concentration. "Captain, I've intercepted a transmission from the Empire's command network. They know about the skirmish, and they're not happy. Looks like reinforcements are en route." Marcus straightened, his demeanor sharpening. "How long?" 30 minutes, maybe less," Haynes replied. "They're scrambling everything they've got. I'd bet my last ration they're not making the same mistake twice." The room fell into a tense silence. The victory they'd just achieved was monumental, but it had also painted a target on their backs. Marcus glanced at his team, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and unease. "We'll make it count," Marcus said firmly. "Haynes, send a secure transmission to Earth. Attach all the data we've collected, shield schematics, battle footage, everything. They need to know what we're dealing with." Haynes nodded and hurried off to carry out the order. Stokes stood, his expression grim but resolute. "They'll adapt quickly, Marcus. They'll find ways to shore up this weakness." Marcus met his gaze, his voice steady. "Then we'll hit them harder. Humans don't win because we're stronger. We win because we're stubborn, because we learn faster than anyone else. Let's make sure Earth is ready to do the same." The team moved deeper into the ship, navigating its labyrinthine corridors with purpose. The flagship was a treasure trove of alien technology, and every step brought them closer to understanding the Empire's secrets. Stokes paused occasionally, downloading schematics from control panels or dismantling devices that caught his eye. Each discovery reinforced what they already knew. The Empire's reliance on energy-based systems was their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. As they approached the ship's secondary command center, Marcus held up a hand, signaling the team to halt. He pressed his back against the wall, listening intently to the faint hum of activity beyond the bulkhead. "They're waiting for us," he murmured. Stokes grinned faintly, his hands tightening around his rifle. "Then let's not disappoint them." Marcus signaled for Haynes to deploy a small drone, a crude but effective piece of Earth engineering. The drone hovered silently, slipping through a crack in the door and transmitting a live feed to Haynes's tablet. Inside, a squad of Empire warriors stood ready, their energy shields flaring to life in anticipation. At the center of the room was Commander Alaric Vallon, his polished uniform unblemished despite the chaos around him. He barked orders in the clipped, precise tones of someone unaccustomed to failure. Marcus studied the feed, his expression unreadable. They've fortified their position, full shields, overlapping fields of fire. They're expecting another frontal assault, which means they're still thinking like the Empire, Stokes said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Marcus nodded. Time to show them what they didn't plan for. He motioned for the team to prepare, their movements silent and precise. Stokes rigged a small explosive charge to the bulkhead, its detonation calibrated to deliver maximum force without compromising the structural integrity of the corridor. The explosion was deafening, and the bulkhead buckled inward, filling the room with smoke and shrapnel. The Empire's warriors reacted instantly, raising their weapons and firing blindly into the haze. Their energy beams sizzled harmlessly against the walls, unable to find a target. Marcus and his team moved as one, their ballistic weapons cutting through the confusion with brutal efficiency. The Empire's shields failed almost instantly, the kinetic rounds tearing through them like paper. Alaric shouted commands, his voice rising in desperation as his forces crumbled around him. Within moments, the battle was over. Alaric stood alone, his weapon raised but trembling in his hand. Marcus stepped forward, his Browning leveled at the commander's chest. "Drop it," Marcus ordered. Alaric hesitated, his pride warring with his survival instincts. Finally, he lowered the weapon, his shoulders slumping in defeat. You shouldn't have been able to do this," Alaric said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Our shields, our weapons, they're the pinnacle of technology." Marcus's expression was hard. "Technology doesn't win wars. People do. Your empire forgot that." Behind him, Stokes began downloading the command center's data, his fingers flying across the console. Marcus kept his gaze fixed on Alaric, his mind already calculating their next move. "We're not here to destroy you," Marcus said, his voice low but firm. "We're here to remind you that humanity isn't as weak as you think. This is just the beginning." The transmission to Earth was sent minutes later, carrying with it the hope of a planet and the blueprint for a revolution. As Marcus and his team moved deeper into the flagship, the echoes of their victory followed them, a warning to the Empire and a rallying cry for humanity. The corridors of the Eterna supremacy were eerily silent now, the echoes of earlier battles fading into a tense calm. Marcus Ward led his team deeper into the heart of the flagship, every step deliberate and measured. The data they had sent to Earth was a spark, but he knew sparks alone weren't enough. Humanity's survival hinged on turning that spark into an inferno. Behind him, Lieutenant Eric Stokes jogged to catch up, his rifle slung across his chest. "Transmission went through clean," he said, his voice low. "Earth's command knows the Empire's weakness now. Let's hope they act fast." Marcus didn't respond immediately. His mind was already moving ahead, calculating the next move. "They will. We've given them what they need. Now, we finish our part." The secondary command center had yielded more than just tactical data. It had given them a path to the ship's energy core, a towering reactor that powered the Eterna supremacy systems. Disabling it wouldn't just cripple the flagship. It would send a message to the entire Empire. They rounded a corner, the air growing warmer as they approached the reactor's chamber. The hum of the ship's systems grew louder, a rhythmic thrum that vibrated through the walls. Marcus raised a hand, signaling the team to halt. "Reactor room ahead," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They'll be waiting for us." Stokes nodded, pulling out a compact scanner. The screen flickered with readings, confirming their suspicions. 10 hostiles, maybe more. Shields active. Marcus glanced at the team, their faces resolute despite the odds. "Standard formation. Stokes, find me a weak point in their defenses. Haynes, keep our exit clear. This isn't a last stand. We get in, we disable the core, and we get out." The men nodded, their trust in Marcus evident in their silence. They had fought together through countless skirmishes, and every one of them knew the stakes. Stokes worked quickly, his scanner mapping the room beyond the bulkhead. He pointed to a spot near the far wall. "Their shield generators are clustered here. If we take them out first, the rest will fall apart." Marcus adjusted the Browning on his shoulder, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Let's remind them why they're afraid of relics." The breach was swift and brutal. Stokes planted a shaped charge against the bulkhead, the explosion ripping through the room and sending the defenders scrambling. The Empire's warriors were already on edge, their confidence shaken by reports of human ballistic weapons. Their hesitation cost them dearly. Marcus stepped into the chaos, the M2 Browning roaring to life. The heavy rounds tore through the room, shredding shields and armor with ruthless precision. Stokes followed, his rifle spitting precise bursts of fire. The defenders tried to regroup, but the humans pressed their advantage. Marcus targeted the shield generators, each burst of gunfire finding its mark. Sparks flew as the devices exploded, their energy fields collapsing in spectacular fashion. Without their shields, the Empire's warriors were vulnerable. The team moved with practiced efficiency, cutting them down one by one. The battle was over in minutes, the room falling silent save for the hum of the reactor. Marcus lowered the Browning, his breath steady despite the exertion. Status? Stokes was already at the reactor console, his hands moving swiftly over the controls. Cores exposed. Give me 2 minutes, and I'll overload it. Should disable the ship's systems completely. Marcus nodded, turning his attention to the room's entrances. Make it quick. Reinforcements won't be far behind. As Stokes worked, Marcus's mind drifted to the bigger picture. The Empire's arrogance had been their greatest weakness, and humanity had exploited it brilliantly. But this was only the beginning. The Empire wouldn't fall from a single defeat. It would take time, sacrifice, and relentless determination. Core set, Stokes announced, snapping Marcus back to the moment. Once we're clear, I'll trigger the overload remotely. They won't know what hit them. Marcus allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. Good work. Let's move. The team began their retreat, moving quickly through the ship's winding corridors. Every step brought them closer to their extraction point, but the tension was palpable. They all knew the Empire would respond swiftly and violently. As they neared the hangar bay, the ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring throughout its halls. Stokes glanced at Marcus, a question in his eyes. Not us, Marcus said, his brow furrowing. Something else is happening. They reached the hangar just in time to see the cause of the commotion. A human ship, sleek and bristling with weaponry, roared into view. Its railguns fired with precision, tearing through the Empire's defenses. Haynes let out a low whistle. Looks like Earth got our message. The human ship touched down, its ramp lowering to reveal a squad of soldiers clad in advanced combat gear. Their leader stepped forward, saluting Marcus with a sharp nod. Captain Ward, the man said, his voice carrying over the chaos. Earth Command sends its regards. We're here to get you out. Marcus returned the salute, his expression grim, but determined. Good timing. Let's finish this. As the team boarded the ship, Marcus spared one last glance at the Eterna Supremacy. The flagship, once a symbol of the Empire's invincibility, now burned from within. The reactor overload would ensure its destruction, but its legacy would live on, as the moment humanity proved they could fight back. The ship lifted off, its engines roaring as it accelerated away from the doomed flagship. Marcus stood by the viewport, watching as the Eterna Supremacy was consumed by explosions. Stokes joined him, his face a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. Think they'll get the message? Marcus's gaze remained fixed on the burning wreckage. They'll get it, and they'll hate us for it. But that's fine. We're not here to be loved. We're here to survive. The explosions faded into the distance as the human ship accelerated into the void. Behind them, a revolution had been ignited, a fire that would spread across the galaxy, fueled by humanity's unyielding resolve.